Guys, it's the EFL fixture release day. Loads to talk about today. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to another video on the channel. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going over every championship club's opening first 5 fixtures, and we're going to be seeing who's got the easiest and toughest starts to the season. We've also got some massive news regarding Derby County, which we'll get to later in the video when we come to talking about Derby's fixtures. But everything that's going on in the championship at the moment, guys, I want to get your thoughts down below. What's your verdict on your start to the season? Are you happy with it, or do you think you got a fairly tough run? As always, if you do want to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. If we get it 300 likes on today's video, that would be massively appreciated. But without any further ado, let's jump into this one. Starting out with Barnsley. Now, there are quite a few unknowns going on around Oakwell at the moment, especially when it comes to Ishmael at the moment. More on that may have been confirmed by the time that you guys are watching this, but in terms of their opening run, it doesn't look all too bad, to be fair. I think that what you want to avoid is generally teams who finished in the top 6 last season and those 3 relegated teams coming down from the Premier League as well, if you want to have sort of a really good start to the season. And Barnsley's opening run here doesn't look all too bad. They've got games against Cardiff, Coventry, Luton, QPR and Birmingham, obviously. Still a lot of unknowns about them, but that's not the worst opening run. After that, we head to Birmingham, who do have it fairly tough, especially compared to Barnsley's fixtures, who we just looked at before. They've got pretty tough games coming up against the likes of Sheffield United, Bournemouth, and an away trip to Barnsley, so 2 of the playoff teams from last season and a newly relegated one on the opening day in Sheffield United. Lee Bowyer obviously did a wonderful job to comfortably guide Birmingham to survival last season with games to spare, but they'll be hopeful to get off to a much more positive start this time round, but that is a pretty tough opening 5. After that, we then get to Blackburn, who for me arguably have one of the toughest starts of the season. They got games against Swansea, Millwall away, Forest away, West Brom at home and Middlesbrough away. Absolutely no easy matches in there for Blackburn to kick the season off with. Obviously, the start of last season, Blackburn were absolutely flying in terms of scoring goals and things like that, but they'll do well to score as many in the opening 5 this season as they did do last time round, because yeah, that's a pretty tricky opening 5. Next up, we then go to Blackpool, who for me have a relatively difficult start to the season, I'd say. Bristol City obviously is a bit of an unknown at the moment. I think there's going to be a lot of changes that happen there between now and the start of the season. They ended last season in absolutely abysmal form, so maybe that's not the worst opening fixture to go into, but after that it's pretty tricky. Games against Cardiff, Coventry, Bournemouth and Millwall. Those back-to-back away games to Bournemouth and Millwall particularly look quite tough for Blackpool, but hey, they'll be looking to sort of take their momentum from last season into this one, I guess. But yeah, pretty tricky start there. Bournemouth have a relatively difficult opener against West Brom, but after that, their other 4 don't look all too bad. We expect Forest and probably Birmingham to be better this season, but other than that, they play 2 of the newly promoted teams as well in both Blackpool and Hull. Obviously, we're still sort of waiting for confirmation on what's happening with Scott Parker here, but if he is to be installed as the new Bournemouth manager, he'll be desperate to get off to a good start this season. Now, we mentioned Bristol City before and the sort of dismal form that they ended this last season with. They lost 7 of their last 9 matches towards the back end of last season. They'll be hoping for a completely clean slate this season and to just put all of that misery from last season behind them. It's a bit of a tricky start to the season. The back-to-back games they've got against Swansea and Cardiff look really quite interesting, actually. I'm sure they'll be quite feisty games with fans back in the grounds. Speaking of Cardiff, they've got a relatively decent start to the season. They played 2 of the newly promoted sides in their first 5 fixtures. As well as that, they've got some potential banana skins in terms of the home matches they've got, but winnable nonetheless. Cardiff will know, perhaps more so than anyone, how important a good start to their season is. Last season and how poorly they started the season under Neil Harris ultimately held them back and left them with just too much ground to make up when Mick McCarthy came in as their manager. With Mick getting a full season in charge this time round though, you'd expect them to hit the ground running. Coventry are back playing at their actual stadium now and won't be playing their home matches at St Andrews, which I think will be a really beneficial thing ultimately for them in the long run. They do start out with a home match up against Nottingham Forest. They do have some pretty tricky fixtures in here for their opening 5 with games against Barnsley, Reading and QPR, 3 sides who all finished in the top half from last season. That away game against Blackpool will be quite an interesting one as well. And next up we then get to Derby County, where things are going to get incredibly messy over these next few weeks. We've got a lot to talk about here, and I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on all this in the comments down below. So last night the EFL released a statement and basically the verdict of what Derby have done wrong and any sanctions that they will face. One sanction that they will be facing is a penalty of £100,000. And the other thing to talk about is a potential point deduction. Now, this is where it gets really messy, because where is a point deduction going to be applied? Is it going to be to the next season, or is it going to be to the season that's just gone by? What this is all about is basically the way that Derby have been doing their accounts over the past several years. They've basically been doing it in a way which goes against EFL regulations by the way that they value their players and write their assets off. They now have to resubmit all their financial accounts to the EFL for the past several years, and this is currently an ongoing process. Because of that, the EFL has released an interchangeable fixture list between Derby and Wycombe. One scenario where Derby are playing in the Championship next season, and one where they're playing in League One. As of course, if a point deduction was to be applied to Derby for last season, that would mean them relegated and Wycombe then surviving. For that to be the case though, all of this in terms of Derby resubmitting all their accounts, the appeal process and everything, would all need to be concluded within 6 weeks, which is pretty unlikely. And although it's a possibility, what seems to be the more feasible option at the moment is that Derby will have a point deduction going into this next season, although there still does remain the chance that Wycombe are playing in the Championship and Derby are playing in League One, if any of that makes sense. Regardless, here is how the Derby fixture list is looking heading into next season, should they actually be playing in the Championship. That game against Forest is looking quite tempting. Next up then to Fulham, who will be looking to bounce back at the first time of asking. Still quite a few unknowns actually going on around Fulham. The Scott Parker situation yet to be resolved as of recording, but their first opening 5 fixtures see them going up against Middlesbrough, Huddersfield, Millwall, Hull and Stoke. Not the worst start in the world. They avoided any of last season's top 6 and any of the fellow relegated clubs. Next up then we go to Huddersfield, who have Derby on the opening day, or maybe they have Wycombe, depending on what happens with the outcome of that EFL process. After that, Huddersfield though do have a pretty tough start to the season. They play 2 of the newly relegated clubs in Fulham and Sheffield United, Reading, who were up there last season as well, and also my team Preston North End. Huddersfield are one of the Championship clubs who has got quite a bit of their business done early doors, which you'd imagine would help them going into that start of the season, and they'd have a bit more of a settled squad. Hull back in the Championship after bouncing back at the first time of asking, and here are their opening 5 fixtures. It's going to be an away match for Hull at Deepdale on the opening day, which I'll of course be at. Of course, provided that fans can be back in stadiums, but if all is well, I'm really looking forward to that one. After that, it's a relatively tough start actually for Hull back in the Championship. QPR, who ended last season really well, Derby, we still don't know about, and then games against Fulham and Bournemouth. Luton have a bit of a mixed bag in here. It's a fairly tough opening 5, playing 2 of the newly relegated sides, as well as playing Barnsley, who finished in the playoffs last season. It is an opening day fixture though against newly promoted Peterborough, which always tend to be quite good matches actually, you know, when the newly promoted sides come up to the Championship. I remember it was it Luton against Middlesbrough when it was Luton's first game back up in the Championship. It was like a 3-3 thriller, so yeah, looking forward to that one. There should be goals in that game. Middlesbrough have a fairly tough opening day away at Craven Cottage, but if Fulham haven't got themselves sorted out by then, it may actually not be a bad time to be playing Fulham, to be completely honest with you, while there's still a few unknowns going around them. And after that, it's not a bad start to the season actually, with 3 of their first 5 being at home. Millwall up against QPR is going to be a fascinating opening day to the season. That one's going to be an absolute cracker. Both teams may be having ambitions to go ahead and sneak into the top 6 in this next season. After that, they got games against Blackburn, Fulham, Cardiff and Blackpool, so a little bit of a mixed bag in there for Millwall. I'm sure that the Millwall fans will be desperate to get back into the den. They were one of the most effective teams actually last season with having no fans in their stadium. The drop off in points we saw Millwall pick up at the den especially was quite sharp, so yeah, they'll be hoping to get back in there and give their team the extra edge. Nottingham Forest will certainly have loftier ambitions going into this next season under Chris Hughton after a bit of an uninspiring last season, which saw them finish in 17th. The game that everyone's going to be looking out towards is that one against Derby at the end of the month. You know, if Derby are still in the Championship and fans can be there in terms of like a full capacity, there could be absolute fireworks at that one. When it comes to Peterborough, these are their opening 5 fixtures, like we were mentioning before with that Luton away fixture. I think that one could be quite an entertaining game actually. After that, they got games against Derby, Cardiff, Preston and West Brom. I think that Peterborough are going to be a lot of fun this season. After that, we then get to my team, North End, who, to be honest with you, I'm pretty happy about this start, especially compared to last season where we had a really tough run for our first 5 or 6 games of the season. We really didn't start the season that well, especially at home. I think that these games give us a much better opportunity to go ahead and do so. And don't get me wrong, there are no givens in the Championship, but compared to last season, it's not a bad way for us to start the season. We got games against Hull, Reading, Huddersfield, Peterborough and Swansea, so we're playing 2 of the newly promoted sides, both at home, which I think is decent early on. QPR really ended last season as one of the most informed sides in the Championship, so they'll be hoping to take that momentum into the start of this season, and they've certainly got some winnable matches early on. Up against Millwall as their opening match, that's going to be a really interesting clash of styles, isn't it? Then they got games against Hull, Middlesbrough, Barnsley and Coventry. Now Reading got off to an absolutely storming start last season, winning 7 of their opening 8 matches. I'd be very surprised if they were to get anywhere near matching that heading into this next season, but you never know, do you? It's not the worst start in the world for Reading here. There are some potential banana skins in there, but they do avoid any of last season's top 6 or any of the 3 relegated Premier League clubs in their opening 5 fixtures. Sheffield United definitely have a few tough fixtures within their first 5. Back-to-back away games against Swansea and West Brom particularly do look to be quite tough early on, but Jokanovic will hopefully have a bit of a plan in place by then, and so they'll look to kick off their season at Birmingham in quite a positive mindset. You know, it's a decent squad for the Championship they've got there, but more so than anything, it's about changing around the losing mentality, and we've seen how that can sort of affect teams mentally after coming off the back of a relegation. When it comes to Stoke, I think they've got a fairly tough start to this season. They started out by playing Reading at home, they then got games against Birmingham, Swansea, Nottingham Forest and Fulham. Those 2 away matches against Swansea and Fulham especially, I think will be quite tricky for Stoke. Stoke didn't exactly finish last season in the best run of form. They only won 1 of their last 7 matches, and so they'll be hopeful to start out with a clean slate this season and will be looking to be finishing a lot further up in the league. When it comes to Swansea, I think they've got a pretty decent start to the season here actually. Apart from Sheffield United as one of the newly relegated teams, all their other 4 fixtures in their opening 5 are up against teams who finished in the bottom half of the Championship last season. Obviously, there's going to be quite a bit of movement with Swansea. Obviously, we're still not completely sure what's going to be happening with Steve Cooper, whether he's going to be poached by someone else. But after their last 2 consecutive seasons of finishing inside the top 6, they'll once again have their sights set on that sort of finish. And then finishing it off with West Brom, opening day fixture up against Bournemouth away. That's going to be a really interesting game, isn't it? They also play Sheffield United fairly early on into this season as well. West Brom still got a bit to sort out. Like I said, as of recording, they've still not gone ahead and hired a manager, but it's looking like Ishmael will be that man, but still nothing yet has been confirmed. With the group of players that West Brom will be coming into this next season with, they are expected to be one of the top teams in the Championship, and so that expectation will be on them from the get-go. But guys, there we have it. There was every Championship club's opening 5 fixtures and what I make of them. Do let me know in the comments down below, what do you think of your opening matches and your running towards the end of the season as well, as that can also have quite the influence on where you go ahead and finish. What games are you most looking forward to going into next season as a North End fan? I'm nervous, but also very excited to be playing Blackpool again. As always, guys, if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. Apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.